The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the kind of nervous energy that only comes when someone's about to get their ego demolished. I should know. I'm Crix-9, Senior Diplomatic Observer for the Vortak Collective, and I've seen more species get humbled than I care to count. Today's entertainment? The humans were finally getting their official species evaluation. You know, the one where we pretend to care about their feelings while secretly betting on how badly they'll embarrass themselves. Next up for review, the Terran delegation, announced Counselor Vex Prime, his triple-jointed arms gesturing with all the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Earth's pathetic military statistics. Population, 8 billion. Active military, roughly 60 million. Kill count in major conflicts, laughably small compared to, well, anyone who mattered. The human delegation filed in, and honestly, they looked about as intimidating as a group of kindergartners carrying foam swords. Their leader, some guy named Marcus Webb, had the audacity to actually smile, like he was happy to be here, getting roasted by the most powerful species in the galaxy. But here's where it gets interesting. While Webb and his team of uniformed officials took their seats at the main table, there was this one human who just didn't fit. A young woman, maybe 25 in their years, wearing a simple gray jumpsuit, no medals, no fancy ribbons, no look at me, I'm important accessories. She found a seat in the back corner, pulled out what looked like an ancient tablet, and started typing. Nobody paid attention to her. Why would they? She was clearly just some aide or secretary, probably there to take notes about how badly her species was about to get owned. So, began Counselor Threx, leaning forward with that predatory grin that made his species famous for being absolute jerks. Let's talk numbers, shall we? Your species has been involved in what you call world wars twice. Impressive for a single planet. I'll give you that, but your casualty reports. He paused for dramatic effect, his mandibles clicking with amusement. 50 million deaths? Across both conflicts, some of our weekend hunting trips have higher body counts. The chamber erupted in laughter. The Zephyrians were practically howling, their crystalline voices creating this awful harmonic that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. The Brutaxians were pounding their massive fists on their desks, and even the usually stoic Minthari were allowing themselves slight smirks. Webb just nodded politely. Those were different times, Counselor. We've evolved since then. Evolved? Threx's eyes narrowed. Into what? Professional peacekeepers. Your current military engagement numbers are even more pathetic. It's a few thousand casualties here and there, mostly from what you call accidents. Honestly, it's embarrassing. More laughter. I found myself chuckling too, because honestly, what else was there to do? The humans were making themselves look ridiculous. That's when I noticed the quiet girl in the back had stopped typing. She was just sitting there, tablet in her lap, watching the proceedings with this expression I couldn't quite read. Not angry, not embarrassed, just patient. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Yithka, her serpentine form coiling with barely contained mirth. We should compare your species' achievements to others of similar development. The Korathi, for instance, managed to eliminate 3 solar systems during their adolescent phase. The Vexhay turned their entire moon into a weapons testing ground. What have you accomplished? Webb cleared his throat. Well, we've established colonies on several moons, developed sustainable energy sources, created global communication networks. Boring, shouted someone from the Brutaxian delegation. Where are your conquest records? Your subjugation tallies? Your genocide statistics? The chamber was in full roar now. Species were literally rolling on the floor laughing. The Kyoth Mori were making those awful wheezing sounds they call laughter, and the Syntharians' lead faces were flashing in patterns that probably spelled out pathetic losers in their native code. Through it all, the quiet human girl just sat there, watching, waiting. I think, said Threx, wiping tears from his compound eyes, we've heard enough. Frankly, I'm not sure why this species was even considered for council membership. They're clearly too soft for our standards. That's when she stood up. Not dramatically. Not with fanfare or shouting. She just calmly rose from her seat, walked to the center of the chamber, and said, "Excuse me." Her voice wasn't loud, but something about it cut through the laughter like a blade through silk. The chamber gradually quieted, more out of confusion than respect. "I'm sorry," said Threx, looking genuinely puzzled. "But who are you exactly? We're addressing your delegation's leadership." The girl smiled. It was a small smile, the kind you might give someone who just told you they were about to arm wrestle a hurricane. "My name is Riley Santos. I'm a data analyst with the Terran Historical Research Division." "Historical research?" Yith-K's scales rippled with amusement. "How quaint. Were you here to document your species' humiliation for posterity?" "Actually," Riley said, still in that same calm tone, "I was here to fact-check your numbers. See, there's this funny thing about statistics. They only mean something if you're comparing the right data sets." She gestured, and her tablet projected a holographic display that made the chamber's official screens look like children's toys. Numbers, charts, graphs, all rotating in perfect three-dimensional harmony. "You mentioned our world wars," she continued, as if she was discussing the weather. 50 million casualties across both conflicts. You're right, that's a relatively small number by galactic standards. But here's what you didn't mention. The display shifted, showing a timeline of human conflicts. Those weren't our first wars. They were just the ones where we started keeping accurate records and decided maybe we should try not to kill quite so many people. A murmur ran through the chamber. The laughter was dying down, replaced by something that might have been curiosity. "See, the thing about humans is we've been fighting each other for thousands of years, and we got very, very good at it. The Mongol conquests alone resulted in the deaths of roughly 40 million people. That's just one campaign, from a time when our total population was maybe 400 million. The display zoomed in on specific historical periods: the Taiping Rebellion, 20 million dead; the Three Kingdoms period in China, 36 million; the conquests of Tamerlane, 17 million; the 30 Years' War, 8 million, and that's just the big ones we bothered to name. The chamber was getting quieter. I found myself leaning forward, despite myself. But my personal favorite, Riley continued, her smile getting just a little bit sharper, is the Bronze Age collapse, an entire civilization system, spanning the Mediterranean and Near East, just gone. Burned cities, abandoned territories, complete societal breakdown. We're still not entirely sure who did it, but the archaeological evidence suggests it was probably us, humans, I mean. We have this talent for making entire civilizations disappear. The display shifted again, showing genetic analysis data. Oh, and here's a fun fact. About 70,000 years ago, our species almost went extinct. Our total population dropped to somewhere between 1 and 10,000 individuals. Want to know why? She paused, looking around the chamber with those patient eyes. We nearly killed ourselves off. All of us, with stone tools and fire. The silence in the chamber was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. "Now," Riley said, her voice still conversational, "you want to talk about recent history? Our pathetic modern military engagements?" The display showed more recent conflicts. Afghanistan, 2 decades of occupation and guerrilla warfare. Iraq, surgical strikes and urban combat. Syria, proxy warfare and strategic bombing. We've gotten very good at making wars look clean. She zoomed in on casualty figures. You see these numbers? These low death tolls you're all laughing at? That's not because we've gotten soft. That's because we've gotten precise. We can now kill exactly who we want to kill, when we want to kill them, without bothering the neighbors. The display shifted to show weapons specifications. A single one of our submarine-launched ballistic missiles can carry multiple warheads, each one capable of eliminating a city. We have thousands of them. Our primitive aircraft can deliver precision strikes from ranges you can't even detect them from. And our soldiers? She smiled that small, dangerous smile again. Our soldiers are trained to fight in any environment, against any enemy, with whatever tools are available. Counselor Threx's mandibles had stopped clicking. These are impressive specifications, but surely you're exaggerating the scale. Am I? Riley touched her tablet, and the display zoomed out to show Earth from space. Would you like to know our current total kill count, as a species, I mean? From the beginning of recorded history to today. The chamber was so quiet I could hear the environmental systems humming in the walls. Conservative estimate. Accounting for all wars, genocides, famines caused by warfare, disease outbreaks from military campaigns, and indirect deaths from conflict. Riley's smile widened. Approximately 1.7 billion human beings killed by other human beings on a single planet over the course of about 6,000 years of recorded history. The numbers hung in the air like a threat. But here's the really interesting part, Riley continued. That's just humans killing humans. You want to talk about other species? She gestured, and the display showed extinction data. We've eliminated approximately 350 species in the last century alone, most of them by accident. Just by existing in the same space. The ones we eliminated on purpose? Well, let's just say that when humans decide something needs to stop existing, it tends to stop existing. I found myself reconsidering everything I thought I knew about these people. You asked about conquest records, Riley said, addressing Yith-K directly. We've conquered every major landmass on our planet, every ocean. We've established permanent settlements in environments that should kill us. Deserts, frozen wastelands, underwater cities, orbital stations. We've sent exploration vessels to every planet in our solar system and beyond, and everywhere we go, we bring our weapons with us, just in case. The display showed images of human colonies, each one bristling with defensive systems that suddenly looked a lot less primitive. Subjugation tallies. Riley's eyes found Threx. We've enslaved entire continents of our own species, built economic systems based on the systematic oppression of billions of people, created governmental structures designed to control populations through fear, propaganda, and strategic violence. And we did it all to ourselves, because we were bored and it seemed like a good way to pass the time. The chamber was so silent I could hear my own thoughts, and my thoughts were starting to sound a lot like warnings. As for genocide statistics, Riley's smile faded, replaced by something colder. The Holocaust. The Armenian genocide, the Rwandan genocide, the Cambodian killing fields, Darfur, Bosnia. The list goes on and on and on. We've gotten very good at eliminating entire populations when we decide they're inconvenient. She looked around the chamber, meeting each counselor's eyes in turn. So please, by all means, continue laughing at our pathetic kill count, but remember that every number I've mentioned, those are just the ones we bothered to count, and we've gotten much better at not leaving evidence since then. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I watched as various council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their earlier confidence evaporating like water in a vacuum. Riley Santos stood there calmly, her tablet still projecting those horrifying statistics, waiting for someone to respond. Finally, Councillor Brutok of the Hammer clans cleared his throat. His species prided themselves on being the galaxy's premier warriors, so naturally he had to salvage some dignity. These historical accounts are interesting, but they're ancient history. Your current military capabilities are still laughably primitive compared to our modern forces. Riley's eyebrows rose slightly. Oh, you mean our current stuff, the equipment we're actually using right now? She touched her tablet again, and the display shifted to show what looked like standard human military hardware. You're absolutely right. Our current generation of weapons is pretty basic. Brutok's massive frame relaxed slightly. Exactly. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, basic energy shields. We moved past such crude technology centuries ago. Riley nodded thoughtfully. Though I should mention, When you say basic, you might want to define your terms. For instance, Bay, or standard infantry rifle, can punch through most known armor types at ranges exceeding 800 meters. Our primitive artillery systems can level city blocks with pinpoint accuracy from distances of over 40 kilometers. And our crude fighter aircraft can operate in any atmosphere, underwater, or in vacuum. She gestured, and the display zoomed in on technical specifications. But you're right. Compared to your energy weapons and plasma cannons, our stuff does look pretty old-fashioned. There's just one tiny detail you might find interesting. The chamber waited. We designed all of it to be manufactured using materials available on literally any inhabited planet. See, the thing about humans is we're really good at making do with what we have. Give us a pile of scrap metal and some basic chemistry equipment, and we'll build you a functioning weapons factory. Counselor Vex Prime leaned forward. That's actually somewhat impressive from a logistics standpoint, but hardly threatening to advanced civilizations. True, Riley agreed. Our weapons probably couldn't penetrate your shields or match your firepower in a direct confrontation. But here's where human military doctrine gets interesting. We don't fight fair. The display shifted to show tactical scenarios, symmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations. We've spent thousands of years perfecting the art of defeating superior enemies through superior cunning. We study our opponents, identify their weaknesses, and then exploit those weaknesses in ways they never saw coming. I found myself taking notes. This was getting educational in ways I hadn't expected. For example, Riley continued, your species, Counselor Threx, relies heavily on collective decision-making through pheromone-based communication. Disrupt that communication system, and your entire command structure collapses into chaos. The Brutaxians are incredibly strong and nearly invulnerable to physical damage, but they have a pathological need for personal honor that makes them predictable in combat situations. Brutok's massive hands clenched into fists. You dare suggest? I'm not suggesting anything, Riley said mildly. I'm simply observing that every species has patterns, behavioral tendencies, exploitable characteristics. It's what we do. We're pattern recognition specialists. She touched her tablet again, and the display showed a complex web of interconnected data points. For the past 50 years, while you've all been assuming we're just another primitive species trying to earn a seat at the grown-ups table, we've been studying you, all of you. Your technologies, your cultures, your military doctrines, your economic systems, your social structures. The web of data expanded, showing detailed files on every major galactic civilization. We know which of your colonies are most vulnerable to supply line disruption. We know which of your leaders have exploitable personal weaknesses. We know where your critical infrastructure is located and how to disable it with minimal effort. Counselor Yithka's scales were shifting color rapidly, a sure sign of agitation among her species. This is intelligence gathering on a massive scale. Are you threatening us? Riley looked genuinely puzzled. Threatening you? Why would we threaten you? You're our potential allies. We're just being thorough. See, humans have this saying, know your friends and know your enemies, but most importantly, know the difference. We prefer to gather all available information before making that determination. She gestured, and the display showed what looked like peaceful trade negotiations, diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges. Everything we've learned about your civilizations has come from public sources. Your own broadcasts, your published research, your diplomatic communications. You've been telling us about yourselves for decades. We just bothered to listen. The chamber was getting uncomfortable again. I could see council members exchanging worried glances, probably wondering what their species might have accidentally revealed over the years. But here's the really fascinating part, Riley said, her voice taking on a tone that somehow managed to be both cheerful and terrifying. We didn't just study your strengths and weaknesses, we studied how you think. Your decision-making processes, your cultural blind spots, your assumptions about how warfare should be conducted. The display shifted to show comparative analysis charts. Most galactic civilizations approach conflict like a formal duel, rules of engagement, proper protocols, civilized behavior, even in the midst of violence. It's actually quite admirable from an ethical standpoint. She paused, letting that sink in. Humans don't do that. When we decide someone needs to be eliminated, we don't challenge them to honorable combat. We don't announce our intentions. We don't follow your rules. Her smile returned, sharper than before. We just make them disappear. Counselor Zeth Prime, who had been silent throughout the proceedings, finally spoke up. His species, the Nexari, were known for their advanced computational abilities and strategic thinking. You're describing war crimes by galactic standards. War crimes, Riley repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting concept. Implies there are rules to war that everyone agrees to follow. But here's the thing about rules. They only work if everyone follows them, and humans have a long history of not following rules we didn't help write. She touched her tablet, and the display showed historical examples. The Geneva Conventions took us centuries to develop, and we still violate them regularly when it's convenient. The concept of acceptable casualties varies wildly depending on what we're trying to accomplish. And the idea of proportional response? She laughed, a sound that somehow made the chamber's temperature feel like it had dropped several degrees. We invented the phrase "kill them all" and let God sort it out for a reason. The display shifted to show more recent human conflicts. When we invaded Iraq, we didn't just target military installations. We systematically destroyed their entire infrastructure, power grids, water treatment facilities, communication networks, transportation systems. We reduced a functioning modern state to a pre-industrial wasteland in a matter of weeks, then spent the next 2 decades dealing with the consequences. She looked directly at Zeth Prime. By your standards, that would probably qualify as a war crime. By our standards, it was Tuesday. The chamber was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Now, okay, Riley continued. I want to make something absolutely clear. Humans don't want to fight you. Any of you. War is expensive, destructive, and generally inconvenient for everyone involved. We'd much rather trade with you, learn from you, maybe share some recipes and cultural practices. We're actually quite social once you get to know us. The display showed peaceful human colonies, bustling trade stations, cultural exchange programs. But if you decide we're a threat that needs to be eliminated, or if you try to subjugate us, or if you just annoy us enough. She shrugged. Well, we've had a lot of practice at making problems go away permanently. Marcus Webb, who had been silent throughout Riley's presentation, finally stood up. What my colleague is trying to explain, he said diplomatically, is that humanity has always been a species that prepares for the worst while hoping for the best. We didn't seek out conflict with other galactic civilizations, but we also didn't assume you'd all be friendly. Riley nodded. Exactly. We've been preparing for first contact scenarios since before we achieved spaceflight. Diplomatic protocols, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, but also contingency plans. Lots and lots of contingency plans. The display showed a massive organizational chart. Every human colony has detailed response protocols for contact with hostile alien species. Every human ship carries enough firepower to level a small city. Every human citizen receives basic military training as part of their education, not because we're warlike, but because we learned a long time ago that being prepared for violence is the best way to avoid it. She gestured to the assembled council members. You all assumed we were weak because our recent conflicts had relatively low casualty counts, but those low numbers aren't because we've lost our capacity for violence. They're because we've gotten very, very good at applying exactly the right amount of force to achieve our objectives. The display shifted to show precision strike capabilities. When we want to eliminate a specific target, we can do it without harming anyone else in the area. When we want to disable a facility without destroying it, we know exactly which systems to target. And when we want to send a message, she smiled that dangerous smile again. Well, we know how to make sure the message is received loud and clear. Counselor Threx's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. This level of strategic planning suggests your entire species is militarized. Not militarized, Riley corrected. Prepared. There's a difference. We don't live in a constant state of warfare, but we maintain the capacity for warfare at all times. It's like insurance. You hope you never need it, but you're really glad you have it when circumstances change. She looked around the chamber one more time. So, to answer your original question about whether humanity deserves a seat on the Galactic Council, I'd like to propose a different question. Can you afford for us not to have one? The display showed the full scope of human expansion throughout their local stellar region. Colonies, outposts, research stations, all connected by a network of ships and communication relays. We're already here. We're already integrated into galactic trade networks. We're already in contact with dozens of species. The only question is whether that contact remains friendly and cooperative, or whether we start viewing each other as potential threats. And Marcus Webb stepped forward. The choice is yours, honored counselors. We came here hoping to establish formal diplomatic relations and contribute to galactic civilization. But we're prepared for any outcome. Riley tucked her tablet under her arm. Just remember, if you decide we're too dangerous to include in your civilized society, you'll be making that decision based on incomplete information. Everything I've shown you today, that's just the stuff we're willing to talk about publicly. She started walking toward the exit, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. Oh, and one more thing. That quiet girl in the back who nobody paid attention to. The one who was just taking notes while everyone laughed at her species' pathetic military record. She grinned. I'm not just a data analyst. I'm also a lieutenant colonel in the Terran Strategic Intelligence Division, and I've been keeping score this whole time. The chamber door closed behind the human delegation with a soft click that somehow sounded like a weapon being chambered. I looked around at my fellow council members, seeing my own thoughts reflected in their expressions. We had all assumed we were evaluating a primitive species for potential membership in our exclusive club. Instead, we had just been politely informed that the humans had been evaluating us, and somehow, I didn't think we had passed their test.